25 years ago, California passed Senate Bill 1756, which established the first state funding for school-based after-school programs in the country. It started at $50 million and eventually grew to $550 million, administered and funded through the California Department of Education. But the practitioners in the field who were actually working with the children and the youth had somewhat a fractured relationship with the department. And the people in the department, the system was not allowing them to come out and connect and even visit these programs. When Tom Torlakson was elected the state superintendent of public instruction, one of the first things he did was to establish a new after-school division as part of the California Department of Education. His vision was to shift the role of the state from compliance to leading in innovation and quality, and to develop a relationship with the practitioners in the field. I was asked to come lead that division in 2012, and I accepted that position with the same sense of calling that I've always had about what's possible for working with young people and helping them transform and find purpose in their lives. My name is Michael Funk. I'm the director of the Expanded Learning Division for the California Department of Education. I've been a lifelong youth worker, middle school science teacher, high school coach, youth minister. During that time, in the 90s, I started the nonprofit in San Francisco called the Sunset Neighborhood Beacon Center, where we turned the school into a community center for teens who were in and out of the juvenile justice system.
Michael and I got to know each other before he started at the California Department of Ed. We both had organizations in Oakland that were providing direct services to young people every day. So we like to say that we got to know each other doing the work.
When I came to be the director of this new after-school division, my charge was to partner with the practitioners and the department staff to develop a new strategic direction for high-quality, expanded learning after-school programs for children in California.
When the Department of Ed actually created space for someone like Michael, who actually had field experience, to come into the room, that was a big deal for the practitioners in the field. He wasn't just someone that was passing through the state system that didn't really understand the benefits of what we now call expanded learning.
That became somewhat uncomfortable because the practitioners in the department, the people had not been in relationship, they did not know each other, and in some sense there was a mindset that if the relationship is too close, it jeopardized the department's responsibility of protecting the taxpayers' money and making sure it's being spent in the right ways.
Once he got here, I really believe he naively thought he could change this system, as big as it is. And he could do that by leaning in with what's best for kids. Every adult in our system would get that. If we're not doing what's best for kids, then we need to do something different. Yeah, not so much.
This tension between the practitioners in the field and the implementation of this plan and the culture of the department went on for many years. And we continued to try to work and mold things and nurture things in the right direction. But after about 4 years, the relationships got so bad that the work almost imploded on itself. And I could sense that I was beginning to lose the very best of what we had worked 4 years to create. About that time, I was invited to attend a compassionate systems workshop in Aptos, California, just outside of Santa Cruz, run by what is now called the Center for Systems Awareness. And I came thinking I'm going to do this systems work, and to my surprise, I walked into the room, found chairs in circles. They handed me a blank journal and said, this is your workbook for the week. And they started off the meeting with meditation. It was a combination of personal work and learning about systems, system sensing, systems tools. It became transformative for me, not because I experienced something new, but because it took me back to who I was and allowed me to understand that I need to bring my whole authentic, full self back to the department. I left the workshop with a commitment that what I had experienced in these 4 days was what I had to bring back to my division, a human-centered approach, and frankly, an approach that was based on love and care and nurturing humans that had been in a really difficult situation. Believing that the only thing anyone can control in a system is how they show up, I knew that I had to show up in my authentic, full self. As I was driving back, I called the planning team and I said, put the chairs in a circle, buy journals for everyone, give me the entire first day, and we started off the day with meditation.
We have close to 100 people in our system of support for expanded learning. And at one of the quarterly meetings, Michael had taken out all the tables. There were only chairs in a circle. There were journals and pens. And he was like, yeah, we're going to do things differently. And people were like, what are you doing? And what are you talking about?
It was a trip because this was a contentious group. It was a group that when we asked things like, hey, can we have some volunteers to help us out? People was go into their pockets, look for their phones, and notice we'd just be disengaged. And this is when I remember when we started doing this work, at first we would be an hour-long meeting, right? We would spend about 30 minutes doing a meditation, doing a check-in, and then I would start thinking like, okay, so when are we gonna start doing the work? But it was about a year into it that I realized that we are the work. So we sent a couple of cohorts to the Compassionate Systems workshop. We invited Peter, Meta, and Robert to our statewide meetings. And that's when we started seeing the shifts. And that's when I got the realization, like bureaucrats were taking off their hats and what? Becoming themselves. And that's when we realized that we're really the humans that are creating the system.
3 to 4 years later, because people showed up for these workshops regularly, with a passion and a commitment to nurturing the human-centered connections, some real healing actually happened between department staff and the practitioners in the field. A few people left, but largely the people began to build trust and develop this container of human-centered well-being where people could become their best selves.
I think Michael's work, the way he shows up, makes it easy for all of us to show up. But not just show up, but show up as our full authentic self. Because he's able to share some of his deepest stories of the thrills of life and the scares of life. And we realize when you know someone else's story, you don't really fear them. And I think that leads to the next big lesson that we learned with Michael, which was having a strong container doesn't necessarily mean the absence of conflict in the container. But it does mean that the container was strong enough to hold all the conflict.
The level of contentiousness declined, but didn't fade away. There was a trust and an ability to have the difficult conversations when they needed to emerge, but people felt like they could actually be themselves. The department and the field staff found ways to communicate and cooperate together for the benefit of our children.
Every conversation that we started with anyone at that point, we led with what's best for kids and families at this moment. Instead of talking about compassion, we started acting compassionately. We started engaging with people in real ways that honored them, their work, and their humanity. Because that's what Compassionate Systems is. That's what this work is all about.
Now with the reopening of schools, and our children having experienced a fractured and wounded public education system, we need compassionate systems more than ever to create the conditions for our students and adults alike to show up as their best selves through this human-centered approach. The Center for Systems Awareness can help and guide us on this journey.